Well, good evening, everybody. Here we are back again at one of our Artburst Live interview sessions, and we are so excited that you're here. We have three amazing artists tonight. We have April Ottey, we have Rebecca Berman, and we have Leslie Miller. And as you already know, all three of those artists are going to be featuring brand new original collections for the Unexpected Twist Show, which opens on May 29th at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. And you know, that's just a little over 2 weeks away. So again, we're thrilled that you're here. We really love these interviews for a number of reasons. One, because we love our artists, clearly, and we enjoy hearing their stories. And we really enjoy seeing sneak peeks of the show work that they're going to have available coming up at the show. So it's just going to be fun tonight and exciting. You can certainly enter any comments and questions in the chat as the artists are doing their interviews, and we will do our best to get to all of them. So my name's Jennifer Steck. I'm a member of the Artburst leadership team. Welcome. So let's go ahead and get started with April. April Ottey is joining us for her very first time in an Artburst Studio show. How are you, April?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. I'm
Oh my,
excited to be here.
look at that studio. We love
Yeah,
seeing.
I'm going to give you a little tour.
Oh, we can't wait. That's even better. So let's just go ahead and talk a little bit about you. Can you tell us a little bit of your story and a little bit about how you became a working artist?
Sure. So I live in Port Townsend, out on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington State. And we moved here about 4.5 years ago from Eastern Washington. And I actually started as a photographer. I got my MFA in photography and did photography for a number of years. And we used to come out to Port Townsend camping year after year, and we would go to this really great glass beach, and I would collect beach glass. And I was always trying to figure out what to do with it. And so I decided to just make some jewelry one year for Christmas presents with this beach glass. And I was hooked. I started beading, and then I started taking metalsmithing classes and jewelry classes, and just continued to follow that. And now I use my photography mostly to photograph jewelry and plants and various things, but I'm no longer doing it commercially. So being here has been great because it's kind of something that we had been trying to get to Port Townsend for years, ever since we came camping here. And so here we are, and my studio's here, and all of the plants and things that I love to work with are I'm surrounded by.
Sounds like a dream come true.
It is.
Yeah, to be out I mean, just the beauty of that part of the country is amazing. You talked about beach glass. Can you define beach glass for people just in case they're not sure what that means?
Yeah, so the beach glass here in Port Townsend is actually created because there was an old town dump at the top of a cliff, and people would push their garbage off the cliff, and it would wash out into the ocean. And then the ocean would tumble it and break the glass and then kind of polish it, and then it would wash back in based on where the currents are. So they would all go to this one certain beach where there was just a lot of beach glass. Nowadays, there's not nearly as much beach glass, but I can walk to that beach actually from my house, which is pretty fun. So, but I don't even use beach glass in my jewelry anymore. I did for several years, and now I tend to use beach stones, and then I do a lot of casting from botanicals. And so I think everybody's work evolves over the years, and that's kind of how mine started, and it's evolved into a new direction. So,
Oh, it has, and it's absolutely beautiful. So you're one of
oh, thank
our
you.
fantastic jewelry designers. What is it about working with the stones and working with the plants that really inspires and intrigues you?
Well, I grew up on a farm, in Montana and spent a lot of time outdoors as a kid and did a lot of hiking with my family. And my parents were master gardeners and went to farmers market and spent a lot of time gardening and growing plants. And so I kind of realized that as an adult, I came back to that. So I do a lot of hiking, I do a lot of trail running, and I also really love to garden. And I used to, garden because I enjoyed it, but now I tend to grow plants that I want to cast. And casting is a process that I was going to show you some examples here. So what I do is I start with a little seed pod that looks this is a rhododendron seed pod. And so what I do is I start with the real botanical that I've collected, and then I put them in a little flask. And so I attach it to a little rubber base like this. This one is actually a little big for this flask, but I would then put this metal flask on there, fill it with investment, which is kind of like plaster of Paris. So this is coated with an investment inside the flask, and that hardens, and I put it in a kiln and it burns out the botanicals. And so what's left is sort of the mold that's exactly the shape of the plants. And from there, I put it on my vacuum caster and it pulls a vacuum on that mold, and I'm able to pour my melted silver in. And so it replaces all of the botanicals and it captures all that texture and detail in the silver piece. And from there, I clean it up and I fabricate the jewelry from these botanicals. So I have a couple, here's some examples of sort of those same rhododendron seed pods, but cast in silver.
They're white, and why are they white, and what do you do to clean them up from there?
So that's really clean silver. So here's one that's not quite as cleaned.
Oh.
And this is a poppy pod that partially, you can see how it partially casts, but I kind of like that.
Oh, I love it.
And so then when I make my jewelry, so let's see, this would be a good example. This piece right here, you can see how it's oxidized. So it's silver, but it has some black down in the cracks and crevices. And so I do that to add the dimension to it. And so you really see the texture of the different botanicals that I use. I've incorporated stones over the years. It started with beach stones, and now I use a lot more precious and semi-precious stones just because I love to add the color and dimension to the pieces.
Yes. And so once you do the casting, how do you decide how that's going to be placed in a piece of jewelry and what goes with that?
Well, I actually have, I do a lot of casting, and so I have lots of what I call raw materials. So I have all the stones and the castings, and I lay them all out on trays and just start kind of playing and putting things together until I figure out how things work. I'm not as much of a sketching and plan it out kind of person. I'm more of a just really moving things around and adding things, and then I'll do some sketches to decide how they might be attached to each other and the connections and the chains and things like that. So it's kind of a combination.
Oh, I love that. So a lot of it is intuitive as well. What
very much so
to you, what speaks to you.
Yeah.
Now, I know that you said you'd be willing to possibly give us a bit of a tour.
Well, I at least want to show you where my workbench is and my view from my workbench. But right behind me here is where I do a lot of the wax work with the botanicals and the casting. And then where you see that tube coming down, that's my soldering area where I do all my soldering. And then I'm going to slowly try to walk so that I don't make you guys dizzy. I don't trip on anything. Over to my workbench. So this is my workbench right here. It's always opposite of what you think it is. There we go. It's all clean today. It's usually covered with stuff. I cleaned it up for you. And then that's the view out the window. And you can see there right down here, there's a few pieces that I'm working on. Ah, there we go.
Oh,
And lots of bits and pieces. And then I'll walk you slowly back. This is kind of my area where I have a lot of my botanicals stored over here. All these trays have all different botanicals that I can cast. And then this is a tray of,
oh, look at that.
well, I'm going to show you maybe like this. So this is a tray of some of the botanicals that I'm working on.
Oh my goodness. And so do they have to dry, April? How does that work?
So the seed pods that are dried work really well, but also I can cast live things if it's like thick enough, or succulents cast really well. So some of the things I cast come directly from the garden.
Oh, that's amazing. I want to see your necklace. I was just kind of admiring.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So this piece it's in the show, and this is a sea urchin texture right around here. And then hanging from the bottom is a little tentacle from squid, a piece of seaweed, and a cast sea urchin tentacle. So maybe you can see those.
Well, and that the stones go so perfectly with that.
And this is aquamarine, or no, this is kyanite, and then this is a moss kyanite as well.
Oh my gosh, it's just beautiful.
I do it. Do you want to see a few other pieces?
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
I'll stay here as long as you keep showing us pieces.
So this is a ring that has aquamarine and then a little gray diamond on the back. And then the band is cast from bark, tree bark, and it's kind of, I call it a wrap ring. And I've attached the stones so that it's adjustable. So this would fit anybody as far as the sizing goes. They would, if they were interested in it, you would just want to put what size you are in the notes, and then you can, I can size it so that it'll fit you when you get it.
Oh, that sounds great. Oh my gosh.
This is kind of a fun piece. I think I held this up earlier, but it is seaweed that I cast. And then it has an aquamarine, and that stone on the bottom is called petersite, which is a really interesting kind of blue stone. And you can see in the photos on the website that all the different colors in that stone.
Goodness. So Jennifer,
these are kind of fun. I just cast these little desert pods. I don't really know what they are, but I love how much detail came out in the casting. And then that's turquoise that hangs on the bottom, and they kind of move.
yeah, I love how the turquoise hangs.
Yeah, it's kind of fun.
So Jennifer says it's such a fascinating process and gorgeous jewelry.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so let's talk about the sizing a little bit, because I know that you have some other rings that will be available for art lovers. If somebody doesn't know what size they wear, how would somebody be prepared in advance so that they know if a particular ring is going to fit?
So I have this really cool little, it actually looks like a zip tie, and it has all the ring sizes on it. And I have these that I can send to a person. So how did we decide that would happen? They could just email me. You'll put my email in the.
Yes. So if you're interested in having April send you the sizer before the show, so we've got 2 weeks. So if you can email her right away, she would have time to get that to you.
Yeah, and it comes like this. It's just like a little sizer in it, and you just put it around your finger, just like a zip tie, and it will tell you what size you are, which is pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. Now, April, what's your email? Let's just go ahead and get it out there now so that they know how to get
Okay,
hold of you.
it's April at April Ottey, OTTEY.com.
Okay.
So April at AprilOttey.com. It's pretty easy.
When you got invited to the show and you agreed, of course, we were happy dancing on our end of things. We're just so thrilled to have you. How did you approach the show, with the show theme, An Unexpected Twist? How did that play into your collection?
Well, I started thinking about all the different pieces I had cast over the years that had a twist in them. And so some of the pieces followed that theme, but then once I started playing with a few pieces that did have a twist in them, then I kind of went with this whole desert and blue green theme. So it started my journey, but my journey kind of veered off into a new direction. But I should show you these. These are probably my twistiest piece. And these are little Vesuvianite and fern earrings, and you could see the little twist in them.
Oh, they are
So,
stunning. It's
yeah, I wish you
there's
could see that stone better.
there's something
There we
really
go.
magical about being inspired by nature. I mean, it has to be a treasure hunt every time you walk out the door.
Yeah, it definitely is. I'm always coming home with things in my pockets. And actually, we went out for a hike yesterday, and I had sticks that were in my backpack pocket on my way home. So,
Oh, I think that's
yeah.
amazing. So Julia says your process is incredible.
No, thank you, Julia. It's a lot of fun. I mean, it kind of makes you look at the world a little differently when you can think about how that's going to be translated into silver. And I'm really interested in the textures in nature and how I can pull those textures into my work.
Yes, yes, it makes perfect sense. Leslie says she is mesmerized. It's such a beautiful process, and you talked a little bit about how your collection started with the unexpected twist. We've had the opportunity to see your whole collection. Um, that's kind of one of the nice things about being on the leadership team, and it is absolutely spectacular. There is going to be a lot of very happy people and inspired
Oh,
people
thank
as
you.
well.
Well,
So,
it was a really fun collection to create. It just the theme got me started, and then I just kind of like when in I just really enjoyed pulling the kind of the desert pieces together it with along with the stones.
yes, yes. Well, your joy shows. It absolutely shows. So, is there anything else you would like to tell art lovers about you or your collection?
I'll show one more piece because it's
Oh,
kind of a
please.
fun story. This is a ring that has turquoise, and then the band is maybe I'll put it. Let's see, I can put it on that finger. The band is cast from a cholla cactus. So the skeleton from a cholla cactus is what that's cast from.
Oh my,
And so you can see the texture in the little holes of the cactus. So that's kind of fun.
I love how it
Turquoise.
sits on your finger too. It's a
Yeah, yeah, with the stone offset a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah. And you could wear it the other way too. Wear it either way.
lovely. Oh, yes. Okay, so art lovers, first of all, if you haven't been to an Artburst Studio show before, you have the ability when you go in on the show page and you select a piece to see a little bit more. April has a number of photos of the jewelry being worn and close-ups and stuff. If you take your cursor and move it over these photos, it actually zooms in further. So it's difficult sometimes to see all of the intricate details in the pieces from all of our artists, and in particular with April's pieces. You can see that they're stunning, but you'll actually be able to see the detail when you zoom into the pieces. So Don't forget that all of April's contact information is on our website under the Meet the Artist page too. So if you want to get busy and start looking, April has her story on her website. You can start following her on social media and maybe even subscribe to her newsletter so that you can travel along on the journey. But April, we are so thrilled that you've joined us for this show, and I can't wait for all the art lovers to see all of your pieces. They are going to fall in love with them just like we have.
Well, thank you. I'm really excited to be a part of it. There's a lot of talented artists in this show, so it's fun to be a part of that
It is
for
fun. It is
sure. Thank you.
fabulous group, a fabulous group. Okay, for those of you just joining us, I'm Jennifer Steck. I'm on the leadership team for Artburst Studios. Tonight we are joined by three absolutely amazing artists. So our next featured artist is Rebecca Berman. Now, Rebecca is an amazing artist, but she's also a member of the Artburst leadership team. And so she helps us put all of these shows together, and it's always such a special delight when she can join us with her stunning, fabulous story-filled artwork. So hello, Rebecca.
Hi, Jennifer. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all.
So how you doing?
I'm doing fine. I'm doing great. I love being on camera. You
Oh, we can
convinced yet?
tell. We can tell. Well, at least you have a lot of support behind you.
I brought my whole posse.
Yeah, you absolutely did. And we love every bit of your posse. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I'm an artist in Denver, Colorado, where I live with my husband and my two teenagers. I'm primarily a painter, and I paint with a combination of acrylic and oil and cold wax. I really like all the different effects you can get with different materials. So I've never really felt like I was tied to one in particular. I have no problem going between mediums and bringing them all in like the kitchen sink if I have the opportunity. Um, let's see, I paint fantastical but relatable characters. They typically have exaggerated features, giant big eyeballs, plenty of personality. I love words and stories, and all my paintings have backstories and lots of layers.
I love that. And so what was your journey to get here?
Yes, it wasn't a straight path. I've always been a creative thinker and I've always really liked doing things with my hands, but I didn't really put those two things together for a really long time. I was not one of those kids who knew they wanted to be an artist when they grew up. Um, yes, I would say my path was not a straight one. My first career was in healthcare as a nurse midwife, helping women become mothers. And then I worked in education, training nurses. And then I worked in public health, helping to launch a teen parenting program. And then I left healthcare to open an art studio with a friend of mine to teach other people how to express themselves creatively. I know most people do that in the other direction. They are artists first and then they open art studios, but no, I tend to do things in my own direction. So I opened an art studio, and then after we closed our physical studio, that's when I made the transition to becoming a full-time artist. And it's kind of funny. There's obviously some differences in each of those parts of the path, but at the heart of things, I honestly still feel like I'm doing the same job the whole time. Like I am helping people become who they're supposed to be. Only now I get to make up the people. So it's sort of the same, but very different.
Okay, you're moving your hands, and so we occasionally get some, we saw a thumbs.
I hope they're at least thumbs ups and not thumbs downs.
Thumbs up. So, well, what I love is that it feels to me, from the outside looking in, that all of your interaction with all of the people in your background has really come full circle in the sense that all of those experiences have helped you create the amazing beings and paintings that you create.
I think that's true. I don't think I could have painted the same way I do now if I hadn't had lots of life experiences up to this point. So that's the benefit of figuring it out a little bit later.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? It's amazing how that works. Now, what is it about painting the portraits that really inspires and intrigues you? And then on top of that, adding the elements of the story.
I'm really interested in people, especially the experiences of women and girls. I guess that is a common thread for me. Um, I'm really interested in relationships and roles and emotions. I guess I love painting portraits because it allows me to get all up in their stories, and then I get to capture just a moment. So, like when you're watching a really long movie and there's all these like twists and turns and stuff, and I get to pick the moment to like pause the frame. And I do make up the past and the future, the whole story in my head all along the way. But ultimately, I get to pick the moment that this character is going to be captured in. And often it seems that I catch them in moments of conflict or uncertainty or confusion or disappointment. That makes them feel more relatable to me. I think these are all like those emotions that we're conditioned to keep to ourselves or mask or whatever as adults, but we all experience those things. And so I paint those experiences, and I think it makes it easier to connect to them.
Yes.
And I do know my characters really well by the time they're done. So um, I don't worry if I catch them in like a mopey, disappointed, overwhelmed moment. I know they're all going to be okay. Don't worry. I do paint some sad, sad girls, but they're going to be fine. I know. I'm a huge fan of resiliency, tenderness, and humor. So all those themes make their way into all the paintings.
Yes. Well, and I think I've heard you speak about it before, but that everyone has that sense of hope. So they
Yeah,
have
it's true.
momentary challenge or whatever, but that they express hope in many ways.
Yes. So sometimes it's just the tiniest little thing. They might look like they have had a rough day. A lot of them look like they've had a rough day, but if you just look really closely at like the corner of their mouth or like a little bit of like a hint of an eyebrow, I will never paint someone who is utterly devastated. I will always go in there and add a little like, but there's a little hope on the horizon. That is who that's who I am. Like I'm gonna stick in a little bit of hope. So don't worry. None of them are devastated. They're all gonna be okay.
Oh, I love the little intricacies. So Julia has a question for you. Rebecca, can you tell us about one of the most delightful details in your collection for the upcoming show? Your pieces often have some small moment of tension or delight that might be harder to see from far away. So I think we're going to skip a little bit forward and have you start showing us a teaser or two.
I do. I do love these little moments of delight. And this is a lot of times like one of the last things I put in the painting are kind of little tiny tidbits, little tiny details. So I'm going to show you this one. This is a great example. All right, so this is chemistry. And let me see if I can turn her so that you can see. Can you see her?
Yes.
Okay. So uh she started out as I was kind of thinking about so my collection, I was thinking about fairy tales and reimagining people from fairy tales. And one of the things that I kind of a path that I went down with about witches and these witches with cauldrons making potions, they always seem to be like poisoning princesses. Um, and this girl, that's where she started. I was like, the idea for like this cauldron, whatever. And I was like, maybe she's actually a chemist, and she's just totally misunderstood. And she's actually trying to figure out something positive. She's trying to help princesses, or maybe she is a princess and she's trying to figure things out. So She, much like April, I started in one spot and whew, by the time I got to her story, she was much further down the road. So she ended up, it's chemistry. Here, let's see if you can see any of these little details. And this is the absolute beauty of the website, is that you can zoom way in on all these details. But she ended up pretty far from an evil witch. As you can see, she's sweet as can be, a little scientist, and she is dedicated to uncovering the mysteries of love. She's doing a little experiment over here with he loves me not. She has an anatomically correct heart pendant. Her name is Jean, because that's hilarious to me. It's a little, this is actually an actual chemical compound of dopamine, what's associated with love and chemistry, when you're feeling those things. Let's see. Here's some side effects that she's measuring with heart rate and butterflies and sparks. So she's jam-packed full. This is what I'm talking about when I'm like, I love, there's the title of her book is The Science of Love. So she's she's all about those little details. I just think she's so fun.
Julia says, of course she has dopamine. She's fantastic. Your pieces have a lot of depth to them too, and so people need to kind of look 2 and 3 times to see.
She's a great example of the end of the process. Like those little details are there, but they don't really get there for a long time. I'd be doing disservice if I made you think that was how that's how the magic works. It does not. I usually tell people that I'm a wildly inefficient artist, because each of my paintings goes through a lot of layers. And just like her, I usually do start with some kind of concept in mind, but that's never when I actually end up. I sort of paint myself into a corner and then I problem solve my way back out of it. I do a lot of adding and subtracting, a lot of trial and error, until I discover the character and their story. And it takes me a long time to figure it out. It also gives my poor husband chest pain. He'll come down and be like, oh no, not again. You did it again. I'm like, like when you're painting people who are evolving, like their stories change. And so you just gotta paint over it and do a different one, which is the way I go. So every painting, she has lots of details. They all have lots of details. It's just that some of them are actually buried that you'll never see because they were in other layers all along the way. An example is a Little Red Riding Hood. I don't have her right here, but she's posted on social media, and Red has several wolves in the background that you can't actually see unless you could see maybe like a hint of a wolf, but you really can't see the details because they're buried so far behind the different layers.
Yes.
In general, I start with some kind of feeling, some kind of phrase, snippet of a story. I sketch things down. I do some research. I do like the plan words. I like hidden elements. And so what I do a lot, oh my gosh, my hands, sorry. So what I do often is I just write down in the moment, right on the canvas or right on the board if I have an idea. I just was painting the sides of this one the other day, and it was funny to me. There was actually notes on the side of it. And it said, on the side, it said, she loved science with all of her brain, which I thought was so funny instead of all of her heart. So sweet. But those little things are hidden in there, and most of the time nobody knows about them but me. But I love it when people are like, oh, I'm so drawn to that piece, and they ask me questions, and then I'm like, oh yeah, there's all these like little things, and usually it's like a little treasure hunt for them too, that they get to know the special story, which is always so fun. Usually those early layers, like when I write something on the canvas, usually they're totally covered up by the end, but not always. Sometimes there's a couple letters or a line or something like that peeks through. I change the background, I change their hair, I change their expressions a lot of times on pretty much every single one.
On the social media, you just shared one that's actually behind you where you showed all of the layers that happened. How many layers would you say you average on each painting? Just out of curiosity off the top of your head.
Probably somewhere between like 20 and billion. I don't know. I don't know. I hope that over time, I get a little bit more efficient, but also I think this is my process. I think this is how I do it. I've tried to do it different ways. I've tried more planning up front. I've tried more journaling up front. So I'm thinking, but really it's once I get started, I kind of get pulled along for the ride. And I think that's the way I'm going to do it forever, even if it takes me forever to make every single one. It just
Yeah.
seems like the way I do it.
Well, the results are beautiful. And I I love hearing about the journey. And what's fascinating to me is that you just keep going. I mean, as artists, we all reach that point at some point where we feel like we're stuck or we hit an ugly point or whatever. How do you keep going?
Well, I actually am got to the point now where I'm excited when I get to the ugly point because like I know it's inevitable, it's going to happen. And so when I get there, I'm like, oh, whew, good, great. Now we're here. And I have a very intricate breadcrumb system where I take a million, billion, trillion photos. I have to like clean out my phone all the time. So I take a ton of process photos in the middle so that if I do something crazy, I can make my way back. So it just makes it, I almost never do, but it makes me feel more brave. Like I know I could paint my way back if I have a picture of what I had. Um, and so that's what I do. I take a lot of pictures. I also, um, if I'm stuck in a weird phase and I can't figure out what to do next, I don't always just paint over it. Sometimes I make little things out of paper or cardboard and I like hold them up and move them around. Sometimes I take a picture and then I will play with it digitally on my phone and try moving things around or changing colors. Um, but most of the time I just paint it again.
I know.
Yeah.
I think that's beautiful, and I think the process is what makes them as special as they are. So Jennifer says, Rebecca, she's delightful, and she was talking about chemistry. Do you have any other pieces you'd like to show us up close and personal?
I do. So this other little one, I'm gonna grab her. So how I approached the show theme in general is I kind of looked, like I said before, I looked at nursery rhymes or fairy tales where there are these girls, but they were kind of this like one-dimensional flat personalities, like Little Miss Muffet or Little Bo Peep. Like they did their one thing. There was a spider, there was a sheep, whatever. And then I tried to kind of flesh them out and give them more complex backstories. Um, and so this other little piece I'm going to show you, she's well known. Everybody knows her. This is, let me see if I can grab her here without falling off my chair. This is Cinderella. I love her. I love them all, but I do love her. So Cinderella actually, had a rough go of it, right? Like she had a tough time with her tragedy and abuse and all that sort of permeated her early life. But there's this one moment in all the different tellings where she's just immeasurably happy, right? She arrives at the ball and she sees the prince and everything is roses. She's dancing in his arms. It's amazing, whatever. Um, and that is the moment that I decided to recreate. And if I was sort of, I reimagined her. It's like, what if, she wasn't really one for late nights and she was more of a 9:15 kind of girl, or maybe up close, the prince was kind of not as dashing as she thought, or that the palace food wasn't all that good at the party, or maybe she's just an introvert and there's like all these people. Or maybe it was just that like those are really uncomfortable shoes. I mean, maybe this is just, that sort of pain, like my feet are killing me. I don't know. But all those thoughts were kind of going through my mind. And as she was getting sort of this more sad, mopey face, I just became more and more delighted. I just love her. I just like she's one of those characters that just is like, oh, bless her heart to me. I just think she's wonderful. I think she's so funny. This is just one moment in the story. I think, after a good night's sleep, a snack, she probably gets to happily ever after in the end. But I love this moment of her. I think she's so funny.
I love it too. And there's something about the way that you captured the expression that really communicates the story. So April says, I love the stories behind each one.
Me too. Can you tell I live with teenagers? Like this is a pretty easy face. I had so many different models.
Well, it's awesome that your family can play such a role in all of your work. So, Rebecca, is there anything that you would like to add that you would like to tell art lovers?
Thanks for taking the time to learn about my work. I love hearing other people's stories, like when they look at one of my pieces and they feel connected and they're like, this reminds me of my sister. Or, I saw it. I didn't see Cinderella. I saw whatever this, whatever it is. I love to hear those stories so much. It makes me feel like that does it for me. That makes me like want to just run back down here and paint something else. So, thank you for all of you that tuned in to watch. Thank you so much for telling me those things. I love getting those little messages on social media or in my inbox that somebody felt connected to one of these little characters. So it's not just me down in the studio painting away, but there's like other people connected. Makes me feel really happy. So thank you for that.
Jennifer says, love your stories and your work. Brilliant. So
Thank you
if
so much.
an art lover buys one of your pieces, the beautiful thing about Artburst also is that you as art lovers get to connect with the artists. And so if somebody decides to give Cinderella a home, Rebecca will be in touch personally to make sure that she arrives safely in her new home. And I'm sure she'd be more than happy to tell you the story behind each piece and kind of those hidden details that make all of her work so special. So thank you so much, Rebecca. I'm looking at all those pieces behind you, and April had all of her pieces, and Leslie will have a bunch of her pieces. I could sit here all night and listen to all of you. It's clear that you love, love, love what you do and that you make a difference for people in the world. And what could be better than that? So,
Thanks, Jennifer.
so thank you for joining us tonight. We loved hearing your story and the story behind all of your paintings. And I can't wait for everybody to see the whole collection. So we have more information on the Artburst website if you would like to connect with Rebecca in advance. We're sending out teasers. Follow her on her social media if you want to see more teasers. You can go to the Meet the Artist page and connect with all of these artists and find all of the details. But if you're following her now, there's going to be plenty more teasers before the show curtains open here in just a little bit over 2 weeks. So what a wonderful way to spend the evening, isn't it? Just being surrounded by such talented and passionate people. So now, last but not least, is Leslie Miller. So Leslie, this is Leslie's second show with us, and we're so delighted to have you back, Leslie. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. Very happy to be here and really nervous.
It is always a little bit nerve-wracking, isn't it? I think the beautiful
Yeah.
thing is once you start talking about your work, then the nerves will go away. So, all of us are cheering you on as we go, and the color behind you is just luscious.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. These are some works in progress that I'm playing around with, trying to work with a darker palette and trying to figure out a way to make that intriguing and to play with saturation.
Oh my goodness. Well, it's working. It's working. We
Oh, thank you.
So let's go back and kind of go where we went with April and Rebecca, and that is tell us a little bit about yourself and how your artistic journey began.
Okay, so I'm adopted. I was born in California. My parents were out there working on highways, and when they adopted me, we stayed in California for probably until I was in second grade, and we came back to Tennessee, and that's where I grew up. And by the time I got in high school, I realized that I wasn't cut out for the same path that most people take. And that school probably wasn't going to be for me, but I knew that I loved anything creative. So my big dream was to become a fashion photographer. Well, my life turned out a little bit different. I became a single mom at 19, 20 years old and had to find a job and had to get something going right away. So I went to cosmetology school and, you know, it was great. I loved it, but it wasn't quite that creative thing that I really wanted to do. But I thought it would somehow I would get there, but I didn't. So then about 10 years later, I met my now husband of 25 years, and his name is John. And when we met, life got a lot easier. So I pursued more and more passions of creativity and pretty much cooking, gardening. I made jewelry. I made all kinds of clothing. I did pretty much anything and everything. I was even a creative memories consultant in the scrapbooking world. And it wasn't until we moved here to Tubac, which is a little artist community in southern Arizona, that I thought, okay, I'm going to learn to paint. And that's when I met my mentor, and his name was Lou Maestas. And he taught me everything from the ground up. He took me under his wing, and it was incredible. And then when he passed away, he passed on his dream of an art school here in Tubac. And I became the director of the art school. And that was a great experience for me because we brought in instructors from all over the country, usually for a 3-day workshop. And so I got to learn from all these incredible artists and all different mediums, all different styles, genres, everything. And really got immersed in the art world, and I love it.
How did you decide what your favorite medium was in all of that education? And what is it you love about that?
Okay, so I think my very favorite medium is oil and cold wax. And I love it because I can layer so many things and there's so much forgiveness in it. And that's a theme in my work is forgiveness and grace. And it allows me to hide things and reveal things. And no matter what the situation is, it can become something beautiful, even if there's all these flaws along the way, which has kind of been my life story. Everything that I've thought is going to be the worst thing in the whole wide world has turned out to be the very best thing. And I like to use that to connect with other people. I just can't get enough of it. And no matter what medium I'm working in, I still love working in lots of layers and hiding things and revealing things. But the cold wax seems to be my medium of choice.
Yes. Now, do you pre-plan your work, or how does your work come to life?
I rarely pre-plan. I mostly work intuitively for at least the first portion. Even if I know that I'm going to paint a hare, I'll play for a long, long time before I ever get to the hare. And hair, by hare, I mean rabbit, not this hare. Usually I just keep playing and try to work out compositional things until something appears to me, and then I'll start working towards something in that.
Now, we've talked in the past about the layers. So how many layers would be in your paintings?
I liked Rebecca's answer, 20 to a bajillion. I always say 20 to 50, but I've never actually counted. When I'm working, I usually work in a series of 8 to 12 paintings with the same color palette. So kind of like what you see behind me. And I'm working across and working across, and I get so lost in my work that I don't know that anybody else is in the room. I have no idea what the time of the day is. So keeping track of layers is definitely not something I'm ever going to do. But my guess is somewhere 20 to 50 for most paintings.
Now, you put the layers on, and then what's
Yes.
the next step in the process?
Well, there's no one step in my process. It changes from every movement that I make. So it's really a call and a response. But I love to expose layers but below. So that might be scraping with a big scraper. It might be cutting back with a razor blade. It might be pouring solvent on the painting to reveal things underneath. Um, the cool thing about the cold wax is it separates those colors. So each layer is kind of protected. And then as you reveal, you can see the progression. So it's a lot like life. I mean, we make one decision that leads to another decision that leads to another decision. And without all of those, we wouldn't have gotten to where we're going. And so that's part of what I love about it.
Yes.
Um,
So
yeah.
Rebecca says, I've loved Leslie's work for a while, and I actually have one of her pieces in my personal collection. And hearing this, especially the celebration of the beauty of imperfections, just makes me adore Leslie and her work even more. And
Oh,
Amy says, Leslie, I love the forgiveness and grace in your meaningful art. Do you have specific inspirations for your paintings that appear again and again?
yeah. Nature is definitely a huge part of my inspiration, color and texture. And then, of course, I have this little thing for hares. They're this super quirky animal that we have here in the desert. They're not a bunny. They're this crazy hare that has disproportionate limbs and can do fantastical things. And they just often end up in my work just because we love to go for golf cart rides and look for hares so that I can photograph them. They're a bit elusive, but they're just totally magical to me. But animals, nature, any of that kind of stuff always seems to find its way into my work.
As I said, you were in the previous show, and oh my gosh, it was just so fun to see what developed in that. Now, how do you know what's underneath when you scrape back those layers?
I don't. So I can show you kind of a progression of a painting that I actually happen to think of taking photographs along the way. Not a lot of them, but a few. So if it's all right, I'll share my screen and
Oh,
show
we
you.
would love to see them.
Okay, so this one's called The Building of Elephants in Nebraska. So do you see that large enough? Is that
You? Yeah.
most of my paintings? I start out with an acrylic underpainting, and I usually start out with some parameters and some intentions. And so the intention for this piece, I knew I was painting for a show called The Power of Woman, so I knew I wanted a woman in it. But I wasn't sure, especially because I felt like it was going to be some type of political show. And that's not who I am. That's not what I think about at all. So I just started playing. I started slinging, and I wanted to make all the paintings black and white. So this is how I started painting. So here's the woman is starting to appear on the right-hand side, and there's a baby carriage. And some possibility of, wheels or something like that. So I just keep exploring. And then it's like there's a bathing suit, and, I've got some things going on, but it's starting to get really busy. So I start talking to myself and I set some new intentions. And my new intentions were to um, eliminate it down to 4 to 6 large shapes. And one of those shapes, I wanted to touch at least 3 sides of the panel. So that's this black shape. And if you look closely, it looks something like an elephant and a woman. And I just took that itty bitty line in that small circle to balance the composition so that it wasn't so heavy on the right. So then I see that elephant, and I start thinking about a photograph that I borrowed from a friend who is actually on this call. And it's a vintage photograph of a woman, and she's got 2 elephants beside her. And the only reason you can tell it's a woman is because of her hand and her shoes. But on the back of the photograph is an inscription that says elephants in Nebraska. So I pulled that photograph out and start developing the elephants. And so now they're a little bit more proportionate to the woman. And as I'm starting to scrape back, you can see in the background a little strip again where I'm trying to connect things over to the left-hand side of the painting. As I start to develop it more, I end up veering from my idea of just black and white, and I had to add a little bit of color. So her gown is golden because she's thinking that she needs the most amazing outfit because there's elephants in Nebraska. And I picture a young girl who's probably been out playing in the woods and discovering all kinds of things in her imagination. And she hears that there's elephants in Nebraska, so she runs home to get her finest gown so she can run with them through town. So here's a detail of where I've scraped back, and in between the trunk and the elephant's leg, you can see that there's a group of people starting to gather in the town to see this spectacle. And that shape that I added, I enhanced it a little bit more, and it kind of gives an idea of that barrel or drum or whatever that they put the elephants on at the circus. And then scraping back into her gown, I can show all the different elements in the background and how there's all these jewels of the things that she's done in her past and in her imagination in her beautiful gown. Obviously, I had that out of order. So this is the details of her dress. And going back to this previous one, after the painting was finished, during an open studio, I had a woman ask me, "Did you intend to make her hair look like an elephant's trunk?" No, not at all. But I guess that's the power of intuition. So this is my preferred way to paint, is based on intuition and following the leads and speaking back and forth to the painting. And that's what I love about the cold wax.
Oh, I love it, and I love the color of the dress too. So you are so masterful with color. There's something about.
Oh, thank you. That's really kind.
All right, so teasers. It's teaser time.
Okay.
And I love your chair too.
Oh, thank you. I stuck with the some of the hair theme throughout this show. There's some other wild animals, but this one in particular is called "It's a Hoot Nanny," and I love that word, hoot nanny. And I didn't realize that all people don't say hoot nanny when they're describing a great event or a really fun affair. So I got kind of made fun of because I was from Tennessee and I used the word hoot nanny. So this is kind of a flip off to them. But so these hairs started out as a creativity and experimental drawing of some hairs with sumi ink, and then I wanted to just somehow recreate that idea on a painting. So this one's an acrylic, but with the same ideas. I have a lot of previous layers that are exposed, and they're just having the biggest hoot.
Okay, so Jennifer said, "I love seeing the process photos. Brilliant." And
oh, thank you.
Wow, Leslie, your process is fantastic. Love the elephants in Nebraska. I love the girl's dress. It reminds me of one of my favorite Klimt pieces, The Kiss.
Thanks for sharing. That's nice. Thank you.
And Rebecca says, "Oh my goodness, the Hoot Nanny is so fun."
Oh, thank you. And so this is another one that kind of defies my usual 20 to 50 layers. This one's probably more under 15. And I stopped because I got really intrigued by the rawness of it. And the whole idea of the painting was that relationship you have with someone, like your best friend or your love, the one that you're in love with, your boyfriend, your husband, somebody really special, that sometimes the lines get blurred between who you are. And sometimes you're the other person, and sometimes you're yourself, and sometimes you're who you are together. So I just stopped. And so it doesn't have nearly as many layers as most, but I just love the way that you can't tell who's in the front, who's in the back. You can't tell who's the male, who's the female. You can't tell who's most important and who's the substar, co-star, co-host. What do you call it?
Who's the
Supporting actor.
Oh, there you go. Oh my goodness. What a powerful piece. I mean, so
thank you.
Very thoughtful and very meaningful. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
is there anything that you would like art lovers to know?
one thing I didn't touch on is how much I love to teach. I'm very passionate about teaching both cold wax and creativity. And so that's something that I want to pursue outside of two-back eventually. So if anyone knows anyone who wants to have an art workshop in their hometown, let me know.
Okay, April says the colors in that piece, talking about the last piece, are amazing, just amazing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Well, I've actually seen that you're teaching a number of classes. And so if anybody wants to learn, I mean, you clearly learned from so many amazing artists. And you're passing that on through the art school, through your teaching, and just the joy that you experience from creating is going to open the doors for somebody else. And that's what a beautiful way to share that journey with somebody. So thank you for that.
Well, I hope so, because one thing that I have experienced with a lot of people that have come through the school is how many people's creativity has been squelched by some, not purposely hurtful someone, but a teacher or a parent or someone who said, that's not what that's supposed to look like, or you're not really very good at this. You should probably try doing something else. And that's not what creativity is about at all. And I think it's mostly just an expression of ourselves. And I totally believe that art making is a learned skill.
It is. It is.
Or painting is a learned skill.
It is. Well, and so Jennifer says, yes, please come to Denver, and Rebecca seconds that vote. So thank you for joining us tonight, Leslie. It's always
thank you.
Fascinating to hear the stories, and touching too. I find myself touched by each one of you in a variety of different ways. So thank you for joining us again for the show. I know you have another fabulous collection that art lovers are going to love. So we'll be seeing you in 2 weeks.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate this time to get to talk about my art. I really appreciate it and enjoy doing it. And I absolutely very honored to be a part of this show and this group.
Boy, if that isn't enough to light your fire, many of these artists teach. So don't forget to check that out on their websites. And some of these, we have artists that have a variety of mediums who've worked in a lot of different areas. And so take a look at people's websites, because you never know when the opportunity will arise. So we are only 2 weeks, just a little over 2 weeks away from our Unexpected Twist show. And these artists have beautiful collections, and the other artists in the show have beautiful collections as well. So the Unexpected Twist show will be hosted on the artburststudios.com website. It opens on May 29th at 10 a.m. And if you're a subscriber on the Artburst website, then you will have advanced show page previews so that you can certainly make your plan of action. But you are sure to find something that you absolutely love and a piece that was created, even if the artist doesn't know you yet. They created that piece and it was meant to be yours, and you'll know that moment when it hits. So our June Artburst Live interview will be scheduled for later in June. It will feature Bobby Baugh, and there'll be more details to come on that. But we don't want you to miss a thing. So make sure you join us for the show. There's more than 150 pieces of original art created by 13 brilliant and spectacular artists. And we are so delighted that you could join us tonight. And we look forward to seeing you at showtime.